Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS and betting preview for this week's Rocket Mortgage Classic. Gonna break down what to expect from Detroit Golf Club, give you an idea of how I'm modeling for this week, and then afterwards go through all of my top plays when it comes to GPPs and over there for outrights, and I'm getting to for some of my exposure this week. So my goal is to keep everything a little bit more concise this week. So let's go ahead, not waste any time at all, and go ahead and hop right on in. We'll start it off with a look at my modeling for this week, which is a little bit less ball striking heavy than what we've had over the last few events. When we have a major championship type of test, a winning score that is single digits under par, it takes our focus away from scoring stats, it takes our focus away from some of the putting numbers, and more so puts the emphasis on the ball striking, whether that be approach play or off the tee. And this week, with a winning score likely near the 20, maybe even 25 under par mark, our focus has to shift a little bit, like I just said. So approach is still number one. It's a number one key stat. If there's anything to point out, it's that the mid to shorter irons are going to get worn out a little bit more than what we've seen over the last few events, but then after that, it gets opened up a little bit. Our number two key stat is putting, so trying to find guys that can fill it up on these greens. And while it is a bent POA surface, a hybrid surface technically, I've heard that they have a lot more bent grass influence. So you can see the putting stats that I'm looking at this week are much more the bent grass stats, the pure bent grass, as opposed to that hybrid surface. And then outside of that, you got some off the tee mixed in, some driving distance will help you on these par fives, but it's birdie or better percentage. It's par five scoring. It's shots gained at quote unquote birdie fest that I'm looking at, as opposed to a lot of approach buckets or fairways gained or a lot of those ball striking stats that we're typically looking at. So a little bit of a different model compared to most. And the result of that is we're looking for more upside. We're looking for guys that have the horsepower, the firepower to get to something like 20 to 25 under par, as opposed to just holding it together. So you can see with my comp courses, it's a lot of your shorter, easier tracks in the PGA Tour, where oftentimes we'll get a winner close to 20 or 25 under par. So I think there's an art form to going out there and scoring like you're going to see this week, and you can really see that emphasized with my modeling. So with that being said, let's get through some of our top plays here. And like I said, I'm going to try and keep this one a little bit more concise. My goal this week is, yes, less yapping and more information for you guys. So let's go ahead and try and stay true to that promise. So first off, we're going with Minwoo Lee as our top spend up option out there in GPPs, our top core play, and also an outright at 20 to 1. And what I like about Minwoo is the firepower at this golf course. He's one of the longest, if not the longest player in the entire field. Cam Champ, guys like Keith Mitchell might have a little bit of something to say about it, but still one of those bombers for sure, and has been very consistent lately, has been pretty much top 25 in every event over his last 5 or 6 starts, and it's included a lot of your stronger fields. And while he hasn't played a ton in 2024, when he's played, he's been exceptionally sharp. So when you take a look at the recent form ranking, he's number 6 in the field, which I think for some people might be a little bit surprising, as he hasn't had any of those super high finishes. He's been killing everyone with consistency, and before he came to the PGA Tour, it was those flashy big time starts that really got his name known out there, right? It's why we knew about Minwoo before he came out here to the PGA Tour, was his performance in the Players, going out there at the Australian Australian Open, going out there and winning that. Those are the type of events that he became known for, and over in the PGA Tour, it's been much more consistent. So I'm kind of waiting for that breakout from Minwoo. We know the kind of talent that he has, and when he has his best style of golf, he's capable of winning a Players Championship, a major championship, I think, out there in his career, let alone a tournament like the Rocket Mortgage Classic. So what I like about this course is the scoring aspects, the drivable par fours, which Minwoo might be able to take advantage of, and then that par 4 scoring par 5 scoring aspect, I should say, where you can go out there and pretty much make them par 4s. If in terms of ownership, I think a lot of people are going to get the Tom Kim this week. I still think he's a solid play. He's one of my top ranked plays when it comes to my modeling. So I think he's going to take away some ownership there. I think people are going to play Alex Noren with the form. Cam Young with his solid stretch heading in here, I think is also going to get some attention. So Minwoo is not going to be a low-owned play by any means, but I also don't think he's going to be mega chalky here either. Something around 20% ownership is what I'm expecting here on a Monday, and if we get that for large field GPPs, that's not going to be too out of hand. Next up, we got Mav McNealy. So Mav McNealy is $8,900, and you can see he's my number 1 model ranked play this week. So in terms of longer term form, he's my number 5 ranked play, number 1 in recent form ranking at just under 2 strokes gained per round, which is for Mav is next level stuff. And he's one of the highest birdie or better percentage players in the field. He's an exceptional putter, particularly on bent grass, which would be good for this kind of week. And when you take a look at his approach profile, the longer irons can be a bit of a struggle. He's outside the top 100 in a few of those proximity buckets, but you give him any shot from 150 and in, and he's at least top 50 in all of those categories. So this golf course, I think, sets up well for him in terms of those proximity buckets, slightly shorter shots than what we have at other events. And then when you're looking at scoring, the putting stats out here on bent grass, it's no wonder that he's out there as my number 1 course play. So I like him there at 8,900. I like him at 30 to 1. That's what I took for an outright number. And out there in DFS, I don't think he's going to be mega chalky. Now, he's going to get some attention, but players like McIntyre will take away some attention. I think even Keith Mitchell, who's one of my top plays this week, is also going to get some attention himself. Last year's winner, Ricky Fowler, also had a solid start at the Travelers. Will Zalatoris also had a little bit of a bounce back at the Travelers too. And at $9,200, he's maybe the long-term best talent in this field, right? Compared to all the other players, Will Zalatoris has the best pedigree of everyone in the field, in my opinion, so he's still going to get played out there in GPPs. The result of that is likely a 20% or lower owned Mav McNealy, so I think we're going to get decent ownership there. He's my number 1 ranked play in the field at just the number 10 in pricing, and at 30 to 1, I think that's a fair take on him. So 30 to 1 on Mav is never going to feel great, but those are the kind of numbers that you're going to get in this week of a field. And when it's a little bit of a birdie fest, give me an elite tier putter like Mav McNealy. Minwoo can get super hot with the flat stick as well, but the one thing we know about Mav McNealy is that he's going to be filling it up, right? Even his poor weeks with the putter are still well into the positive when it comes to the shots gained, so I'm not worried about that at all when it comes to his skill set. And then our last core play, before we hop into our values, our diamonds in the rough, a little bit further down the board, is going to be Chris Kirk. He's not playing as good a golf as these top 2 options. So if you're looking for safety, if you're looking for a lot of made cuts, top 20 equity, then probably don't play Chris Kirk. But if you're looking for long-term course fit and long-term course history out there with Chris Kirk, that is exactly what you're going to get. So first off, let's start with the course history. His last 4 years here, his worst start was 4 years ago when he finished T21. He's gone T21, T12, T17, and T14 his last 4 years, so has very consistently gone out there and paid off at this event, and it makes sense when you consider some of the comp courses. When you take a look at other birdie fests where scoring conditions aren't all that hard, Chris Kirk has been an absolute killer. The Fortinet, a lot of these other tracks that I mentioned on here before, he has plenty of top 10 finishes to his name. And even when you look at some of the longer birdie fests, like Kapalua, for example, where Chris Kirk went out there and won this year, he's had plenty of success at those. And you wouldn't really expect that at nearly an 8,000-yard golf course that Kirk would beat all the world's best, that would go out there at a signature event and be the top option after the week. That is something very notable out there for Chris Kirk, right? As more of a plotter player, more of an accuracy first player off the tee, you would not expect that from him. So at a golf course that is a little bit shorter, much more suited towards Chris Kirk, he's got that long-term course history, also a birdie fest, like what we have at Kapalua. I think that plays directly into his skill set. So even though the form has not been great lately, in fact, if we bring up the shots gained metrics and show you what we're talking about here, he's losing in all 4 stat categories. This is the kind of get-right spot that a player like Chris Kirk can go out there and break through. So I think that Mav is going to get some ownership. Minwoo is also going to be a relatively popular play. There will even be a few other options up top that I'm taking with a little bit of ownership this week as a little bit of chalk. However, Chris Kirk is going to get you different. Chris Kirk is almost certainly going to be a sub 10% owned player, and I think he'll even be lower owned than Thor Bjornsson, the new kid on the block. I think he'll be lower owned than Ryan Fox, Davis Thompson when it's all said and done. And considering the fact that he's the one guy on tour out of these guys that's actually won this year, and also a player that long-term has played very well at the Rocket Mortgage Classic, I think makes a lot of sense for GPPs this week. So he's an example of the type of guy that I'll be using to get a little bit different. He's got the course history, he's got the course fit that I'm looking for, and overall, that's why he makes my player pool. Before we hop into our value plays, our diamonds of the rough, like I said before, I'm going to remind you guys about my Patreon page. If you're looking for access to all the spreadsheets and information that you see in these videos, well, make sure to check out my Patreon in the description of this video. Down there, you can get access to these spreadsheets, which has all my modeling, all my takes for every single player in the field. So whether it's the Rocket Mortgage Classic, major championship like the US Open that we had a few weeks ago, I'm constantly covering every single player that's playing. That includes your Monday qualifiers, that includes the players that we haven't seen before. If you want a full take on what to expect from them for any given golf tournament, my Patreon is the place to be. On there, we've got DFS projections, ownership, my player pool to give you some insight onto how I'm attacking any given slate, but also all of the different research sources that I have on here. That would be my modeling, my course modeling, recent form rankings, all of that, as well as recent form, event history for every single player in the field, and shots gained metrics over the last 24 and last 12 measured rounds that you can use to research every single player in the field. So again, if you don't just want my take on these 6 players that we're going to talk up here, make sure to check out the Patreon for my full take on any given event. But now hopping into the bottom end of the board, we've got ourselves the value plays of the week. And the first one we're going to talk up here is going to be Nicolai Højgaard at $7,300. And I got him at 65-1, which I thought was a solid number in this week of field. And what you like about Højgaard, it's very similar to a Minwoo Lee when it comes to the skill set, right? Now, Højgaard long off the tee, a very aggressive player like we have with Minwoo. And if you compare their long-term success on the DP World Tour, you could say that they're very similar in terms of their long-term pedigree. Now, recently, the form has favored Minwoo over Højgaard. That's why one is a 10K golfer, one is $7,300. But if we're just comparing long-term talent, Højgaard is an $8,000 golfer at the very least. And I think if he was $8,500, even $8,600, no one would have any complaints about that when it came to the pricing. But long term, he should be a 9K golfer in this kind of field. So if you're looking for an inefficient price tag, if you're looking to get like an 8, 9K talent down here in the 7K range, Højgaard's your guy, and I think he'll get some attention. The talent level is just too high, right? For him not to be probably at least 10% ownership this week. However, I'll still play him if he's in that 10 to 15% range. He's drastically mispriced. I think he's got legit win equity in this kind of field, let alone if he finishes top 10. That would for sure be optimal at a $7,300 price tag, and it's giving you all that salary savings to go up there and spend up for an extra stud up top. So I think there's a lot of utility in getting to these higher upside kind of players. I like Dunlap this week too. Dunlap could have easily been the play that we talked up in this range as well, and it would have been for a lot of the same reasons. Long off the tee, par 5 scorer. You're getting that with both of these kind of players. So Højgaard's the one that I chose to talk up, the one that I chose to go out there and bet outright, but there's a lot of players with that same kind of skill set that I'm taking over here in the bottom end of the sevens. Next up, we got Eric Cole at $7,000. So I got him at 100-1 to win. So even further down the board when it comes to the outright value. The form isn't great. So very similar play to something out there like a Chris Kirk. But what you like about Eric Cole is he's a high birdie percentage player when he's playing his best golf. He's also better with the mid to shorter irons, which is the proximity bucket that is used the most around a Detroit golf club. And he's also a player that tears apart the par 5s when he's playing his best golf. And long term, Eric Cole is an $8,000-$9,000 golfer. I mean, he was your rookie of the year last year. He started really sketchy over here in 2024. And though it wasn't great, especially like the first 3 months of this year, were horrible for Cole. It was a lot of missed cuts out there for somebody of his talent level. He has started to right the ship a little bit. The shots gained metrics are starting to come along for him a little bit. You've seen the results follow as well, where you've started to see more top-end finishes from him out there in events that make more sense. And now that we're at a course where off the tee, it's not as penal is what we've had for some of the signature events, some of the harder fields where Cole has gotten into right after his really strong rookie season. I think it's a much better fit. Maybe the reason why he's had such a bad 2024 is now that he's playing these quote-unquote big boy golf courses, right, that are like nearly 8,000 yards, they don't fit Eric Cole's game. Now we get him at a course that's only 7,300 yards. It's a par 72, so it's a shorter course. Given the par for the course out there, I feel like that is directly playing into his skill set. So $7,000, just a better player than the price tag, and another player that also excels on bent grass, which I think you're going to need out here at a birdie fest. And then the last play we're going to go through is another guy at 100 to 1, and he's $6,600. So even cheaper than what we had there with Eric Cole, and it is Alejandro Tosti. And what I like about Tosti is he's a par 5 scorer. He's one of the best par 5 players that we have in the field, a high birdie or better percentage player. So very similar to some of the other aggressive players that we're going after, like a Højgaard, a Minwoo up top. And he's way too cheap. I mean, Tosti has legit shown up in tournaments this year. He's gone into contention a handful of times already. And he's the kind of player at 6,600. If he finished top 15, I mean, that's getting close to optimal right there. And he certainly has top 15 upside. And I think could legit even win this sort of event. What we're looking for this week, right, are scores. Guys that can go low. Guys that have the horsepower to go out there and get to 20, maybe even 25 under par. Well, Tosti is maybe the most aggressive player in this field. I mean, just think about the US Open when he went out there and went for the island green off the tee. I mean, you're going to need that kind of skill set this week. And given some of the shorter drivable par 4s, you know, he'll be able to take those on with his prodigious length off the tee. The par 5s, already mentioned the par 5 scoring. It's the kind of course where I think in DFS, he brings even more upside than he does out there for the outright bet. Like outright bet him winning, you know, it's going to take a perfect week for Tosti to get over that finish line. He's not, maybe not the most consistent putter. He's not the best around the green player, but where he can really shine, and Nick Dunlop, another example of this kind of player, is he outscores his placement, right? He goes out there, maybe he'll finish top 20, but he'll make the 5th most birdies out of the entire field for any given week. That's what you love about him out there for DraftKings. So I think maybe a better DraftKings play than an outright bet, but at $6,600 checks a lot of those boxes that I'm looking for, and it's a player that I think has a lot of upside for this given week. Alrighty guys, that is all I've got for this week's DFS and betting preview. Before you hopping out of here, go ahead and smash that like button for me, and also comment down below who you've got winning this golf tournament. If you can go ahead and get that winner, you will win a free month of my Patreon page, and there's no restrictions on it. Just as soon as the player's taken once, they cannot be taken again. So go ahead, claim your player down below before somebody else steals your guy, and you go ahead and enter that free month of the Patreon contest. If you want to go ahead, just get access to the spreadsheets even before this contest ends, well, go ahead and check out the link in the description of the video. On there, I've got access to my Patreon page, and there's a few different tiers that you can choose from. We've got the DFS tier, which will give you access to all the spreadsheets that you see. That'll be for the main slate like you saw posted there, as well as the showdown slates for rounds 2 through 4. So DFS tier, which is $15 a month, will get you access to all of those. I've also got a prop tier, which is where you can get all my prop analysis, whether it's for DraftKings Pick 6, Underdog, or Prize Picks. That includes all the slips that I'm entering on that side, as well as all the different prop research that I'm doing. So that'll be stat averages, breakdowns on pin locations, etc., etc. There's a $15 tier for that as well. And if you want all of that content into one different tier, there's also a $25 tier that you can use for that as well. So make sure to check that out if you guys haven't already. Smash the like button if you haven't already. Enter the giveaway. Go out there, give me your winner like I said, and I'll see you guys for the rest of the content throughout the rest of the week.